In this lesson, we've done a lot of work on tenses and verb forms. Now, you might have found it quite complicated and technical, and really, unless you're teaching ESOL students, you don't really need to know about the tenses in that much depth or detail, but you do need to have a rough idea as an English teacher. So we're nearly at the end of this lesson, and for the final task, you're going to be asked to write a spoof report for a tabloid newspaper about a well-known event and think about what tenses you're using. But first, I want to quickly look at the kind of syntax which is typical to newspapers, or journalese as you could call it. Now, tabloids have a really distinctive style which is worth looking into. So if we look back at the story about Romeo and Juliet, we can see it's got a really distinctive tabloid style. And one thing to notice is that the sentences are really long and that there's usually just one sentence per paragraph. Let's look more closely. The first sentence of this paragraph has got a lot of detail crammed into it. And the writer achieves this by using adjectival phrases before and after the subject, here and here. And these sort of bolt-on details are really typical of journalese. You'll see it all over the place. Another way that the writer packs in the detail is with the combination of subordination and relative clauses. So here is a subordinate clause with the conjunction, and here is a relative clause. And it's this kind of combination which allows the writer to use really long sentences packed full of detail. So why do journalists write like this? And what's the effect of this kind of syntax? Well, in my view, it enables the writer to pack in loads of detail. And unlike the Hello article about Princess Kate that we saw earlier, where we had a lot of description, this is supposedly factual detail. So if you look here and here, we can see facts. Now, all of these facts tightly packed into the sentence gives us the impression that this is a factually credible piece of writing, that it's to be believed. And this use of syntax is one of the ways that journalists and editors try to kind of hoodwink us into believing what we read in their newspapers. If you look carefully, you can see that there's a lot of non-factual information. There's a lot of opinion. But because of the style of writing, we're led to believe that it's purely factual and therefore reliable. And one last thing that might be worth looking at is how the information is structured in the whole article. See how the first two paragraphs are about what has just happened. And in the first paragraph, we've got the answers to all of the what, the where, the who and the when questions. And then we get the backstory in paragraph 3, so we get all the details and the context. And in the final paragraph, we move back to the present with a quote from an authority figure and then how the situation has been resolved. And this is really, really typical tabloid structure. And because we're moving backwards and forwards in terms of the story, in terms of time, the tenses are mostly past tense and past perfect tense. Okay, so it's now over to you for the final activity of this lesson.